friends, welcome back to another video. If you're new here, my name is Amy and I make mostly bookish content here on YouTube. If you like what you see here today, go ahead and click that like button, subscribe to my channel for more, and go ahead and introduce yourself down in the comments. Let me know what your favorite book is, what you're reading right now, or what you'd like to see in future videos. Today I'm going to be talking through some spring book recommendations. Now, this can definitely vary from person to person what you enjoy to read during each season. So as I go through these recommendations, I'm going to be kind of talking through the settings or the atmosphere, the vibe that I associate with springtime. And I'll go into some more specifics as I go along, but broadly, I really like to romanticize the season. As I've gotten older, I think spring and fall are definitely my favorite times of year. I have a lot of nostalgia associated with summer and winter time, but my adult self really loves spring and fall. During the spring, I'm feeling very romantic, very connected to the natural world, and I tend to go back to a lot of classic literature, specifically books set in England or the English countryside. So I'm going to go ahead and start with an author that I particularly like to read in the springtime, and that is Jane Austen. I do actually have a small collection of various Jane Austen titles with different covers. I was recently given this copy of Pride and Prejudice, which has recipes sprinkled throughout, and I just think it's so lovely. But I definitely feel a strong correlation between spring and Regency, and to a lesser extent Victorian London, or the English countryside. I guess England in general. Perhaps some of that is my own personal experiences having visited England in the spring, but I think it also has to do a lot with some of the media that I've consumed that is set in England during the spring. But especially Regency era, I feel very drawn to in the spring. If you know me personally, you know that I love Jane Austen. You might be surprised that I actually haven't read in full all of her works, but I am definitely familiar with all of her works, and I've watched a lot of film adaptations of her work. I just love the way that Jane Austen writes about love and family and the role of women in society. She is incredibly witty and satirical, and she is just the queen of writing ridiculous characters. If you've never read any of her works, I'll definitely say that they aren't super fast-paced or anything. You should read blurbs about each one and kind of see which one you're most drawn to, because I would say that her 6 full-length novels definitely have different vibes between them. My favorite is definitely Pride and Prejudice of the ones that I've read in full. I love the tension between Elizabeth and Mr. Darcy. I think I compare every hate to love romance to theirs. There's just so much tension and so much will they, won't they, and I absolutely love it. A lot of people do say that Emma is their favorite as well. Emma is definitely very lighthearted, and though Emma as a main character is very flawed, I think that's part of what makes the book so entertaining. So you could start with one of those two, but like I said, you might feel drawn to a different one. So anyway, I think Jane Austen is really great for spring reading. Next, I'm going to go back to my childhood a little bit and recommend an author whose works perfectly encompass what I picture when I think of English countryside, and that is Beatrix Potter. I have this giant collection of her works, and I've actually been reading through them with my little girls. But really, I just think that they're so timeless. The stories are so charming, and I really think that they should be read in the spring. These little animal characters are so precious, but also so mischievous. And the artwork that Beatrix Potter has created to go along with these stories is just so beautiful. I honestly think I should have some prints that I just use throughout my house because I love them so much. I was actually reading a little bit about her yesterday, I think, and she actually worked in science, creating very detailed illustrations of mushrooms and I think other like flora and fauna. And I just thought that was really interesting because she does such a good job of capturing the natural world through her art. But anyway, I just think whether you're young or old, these stories will bring you into the magic of spring, especially in the natural world. I absolutely love Beatrix Potter. I actually have some notes that that I'm looking at because I was hoping this wouldn't be super rambly, but I realized that I unintentionally kind of go back and forth between some Regency recommendations and natural world recommendations, and just kind of funny. Anyway, so actually next I want to talk about a series, and that is the Bridgerton series. I absolutely love this special edition version of the first 2 books, and I want to get the whole collection. But over the last few years, I've been watching the television show Bridgerton in the spring. I think it's my most rewatched TV show at this point. And each spring I usually read one of the books in the series. I already mentioned that I love Regency London, so this really shouldn't be a surprise. But I do want to give the caveat that I don't necessarily think that these books are great literature. Of course, everyone's going to have their own opinions, but I want you to know that I don't necessarily think that these books are good. I just absolutely fell in love with the show and decided that I wanted more Bridgerton in my life, and these books allow me to escape back into that world and feel a similar level of comfort that the show provided to me. At this point, I've read the first 4 books in this series as well as the Queen Charlotte book, and you should know going into any of these books that the show does fix a lot of things that are problematic in the books. Book 3 in particular, Benedict's story just really made me mad. Please go and read my Goodreads review of that book if you want to see me rant and rage about it. I will say that I absolutely love Benedict in the TV show, so I do actually have high hopes for the next season, but the book was bad. I know that a lot of problematic things have happened throughout history, throughout different eras. So of course you can make the argument that in writing about the Regency era that there are going to be problematic things that pop up, especially in the way that men treat women and society treats women. But I do think that I want something different when the book is more contemporarily written. It's just really hard for me to root for a main character and a love interest when they do things that are really awful and say things that are really awful. Book 3 was just particularly bad. The other ones that I've read have things, but that one was just especially bad. Still, I am enjoying this series for the association that I feel with the characters and the show, and I really like reading these in the spring. I just wanted to make this recommendation with that warning. You just have to go in with the right expectations when it comes to this series. Speaking of books that have some issues that I love, I also want to mention The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. This is a very well-loved classic, and I really liked it. This is the Mina Lima edition. I think I've talked about these before, but they're full of really beautiful illustrations and interactive elements. Highly recommend. I'm trying to collect them all. But I think The Secret Garden is really good to read in the spring, especially for that gardening theme, which is something that I associate with the spring as I'm planting my own garden and planning out what I want to do not only in the spring but summer and fall. As flowers start to pop up, I just think about gardening. So it makes sense that The Secret Garden would fit for spring. This book is much older, and some would probably say that it's a product of its time. So I am, I guess, a little less harsh on critiquing the errors within this book. I still think it's important to note that this book does include both racism and ableism, and those things are not okay. They weren't okay then, they aren't okay now. And even though people are more aware that those things are wrong now, I don't think that's necessarily an excuse, but it does explain a little bit, if that makes sense. That being said, I still believe that this story has a lot of merit, and it's definitely worth reading. I love the themes of growth and change, and the way that those themes are paralleled both in the characters and in the garden. Those are themes that I think are great to reflect on in any season, but I do think there's something about gardening and what's happening in the natural world that lends itself to pondering those themes, especially in the season of spring. So if you haven't read this one, or if you haven't read it in a long time, I think this would be a great pickup for this season. Next, I want to talk about some poetry that I recently discovered, and that would be the Flower Fairies series by Cicely Mary Barker. There are a number of editions out there. These are ones that I got from the library, though I do want to own my own copies at some point. But this is the Winter Flower Fairies, and this is the Spring Flower Fairies. And this is a poetry collection that emphasizes the beauty of the natural world throughout each season. I actually haven't read the spring collection yet, but it is on my list for this year. My girls and I recently read the winter collection, and each poem is accompanied by an illustration of a fairy with the plant or tree or flower that the poem is describing. I'll show you a little bit in here. The artwork is absolutely gorgeous, and the poems are really charming. The way that I read it with my girls was that we would go to the next poem. I would look up an actual picture on Google of the plant or the flower. I would point out some of the details about it, and then we would look at the illustration, point out the features that we see in the plant, and then read the poem, and I would kind of share my interpretation of the poem with them. They are a bit young to understand the metaphors within the poems, but I think that they enjoyed the pictures, and I like that they got to learn a little bit more about the natural world in that season. So we did it in winter, and now I'm hoping to do it in spring as well. On a similar note, I want to mention the Bramley Hedge stories by Jill Barklam. This is the winter story, and again, like the Flower Fairies, there's a story or a collection for each season. We read the winter story this past season, and I requested the spring story for our spring reading. And this does remind me a lot of Beatrix Potter in style. These are stories about a little village full of mice and the goings on of the various mice family in this community. Besides just the seasonal stories, there are other stories as well, and I think the artwork is so charming. It's very detailed. I'll show you a few pictures here. Absolutely beautiful. I think you can buy prints and calendars and things on their website, and I would definitely love to have some of those for the different seasons. But like the Flower Fairies, I recommend that you read these stories throughout the year as you celebrate each season. I thought the winter one was super charming and cozy, and this is a library copy, but I would like to purchase my own because I think that these are stories we'll read year after year. And now I want to talk about a few books that I haven't read yet, but that are at the top of my spring reading list. The first one that I want to mention is The Rose Bargain by Sasha Payton Smith. At the time of filming this, I haven't read this yet, but it is on a recent TBR, so hopefully it will be soon that I'll have a review for you. But this is a new release. This came out in February of this year, and I've heard nothing but fantastic things about this. I've heard it compared to The Selection and The Cruel Prince. I've also heard that it's like Bridgerton, but with fae, and everything about this book just sounds like it's perfectly made for me. In this version of Regency London, the fae are very powerful and maybe even rule. I'm a little confused about that based on the blurb, but regardless, there is a fae queen, and every London season, the eligible women in society make bargains or deals with different fae in order to gain qualities that make them more attractive to suitors. This year, though, has even higher stakes because the Fae Queen announces that this year there will be a special competition for all the ladies of the Ton, and whoever wins this competition will win the hand of her son, the Prince Bram. Our main character, Ivy, knows that this is an opportunity for her to change the life of her family forever. She's basically willing to do whatever it takes to win. I believe that Ivy makes some kind of deal or starts working with the prince's younger brother, who's a bit of a rake, and I think he's helping her with the competition. I'm curious to see if that turns into the actual romance, but those are just my spidey romantic reader senses going off, so I don't know if that's actually true. But the blurb also indicated that there's something dark and mysterious also going on that could completely change everything, so I'm really curious about that too. This is a duology. I'm not sure when book 2 is supposed to come out, but I've had good luck with YA romantasy duologies recently, so hopefully this one is good too. There are so many things that appeal to me about this book. Regency London, fantasy, a competition element. I love a competition, especially if it has different trials. So assuming this is well done, this could be a new favorite. Hopefully it lives up to all of my expectations. We'll see. I definitely think this is a great pickup for spring. Next, I want to mention an author that I am dying to read based on all of the high praise that I've heard of her works. And that is Georgette Heyer. Like I said, I've never read anything by this author, but I've heard that she's a must-read author for fans of Jane Austen. She began her writing career in the 1920s, but I believe that most of her books are set in Regency London. That setting, along with her wit and her captivating romantic storylines, seem to make her a fitting recommendation for for Jane Austen fans. The book in particular that I want to start with is Venetia, as I've just heard that it's incredibly entertaining and the romance is especially intoxicating. In this story, Venetia is 25 years old, and while she is wealthy and her future is safe after inheriting a large estate in Yorkshire, she's approaching spinsterhood and she wants a deep and passionate love. She has some potential suitors, but they're all a bit boring to her. And then one day, her neighbor, who has been absent for a long time, returns and everything changes from there. Lord Damerel is a notorious rake, but something about him is really intriguing to Venetia, and she and this lord become friends, much to the Ton's horror. She might be willing to risk scandal if he turns out to have a soft and gentle heart underneath it all and in spite of his reputation. I'm really curious to see where the story goes. From everything I've heard, I think this has the potential to be a new favorite and potentially a new favorite author for me as well. So Georgette Heyer definitely seems like a must read in the springtime. All right, I have one more book to mention, and this has actually been on my list for years now, but I just haven't made time for it, and that is The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. This copy is completely falling apart, but I still really like it, so maybe I'll try to repair the cover a little bit. That being said, I think that when I finally read this book, I'm going to absolutely love it. I don't know too much about it beside that it's a collection of stories about 4 small animals in London, I believe. I'm kind of imagining that it will give me similar vibes to Frog and Toad, but to be a lot more lyrical in its prose. I mean, Frog and Toad is pretty simple. Still fun though. I love Frog and Toad. I definitely recommend that for the spring as well. But I also imagine that this will have a bit more depth as well. I'm pretty sure that this has quite a few stories written in the spring. I think maybe there are other seasons as well. I think in general, because it has these small animals, I associate it with spring too. I've heard a lot of people talk about this as like a cottagecore staple, so I'm curious to see what I think. I don't know, have you read this one? Let me know in the comments. This one seems like a really cozy read for the spring, and I really hope I get to it soon. That being said, that is the conclusion of my list, at least for this year. Maybe I'll have a new list next year. But I'd love to know what books you associate with spring, if there are authors that you associate with spring, if you've read anything recently that you thought perfectly fit for the spring season. Please let me know in the comments. I'd especially love to know if you have any Regency England recommendations, or especially cozy books related to the natural world in the springtime. I'm all about those cottagecore vibes, so give me all of your recommendations. I hope you're having a wonderful day. I hope you have the most beautiful spring, and that if you live in a colder climate or a climate with a lot of variety, that you're enjoying some sunnier, warmer days, opening your windows, getting some fresh air. And thank you so much for taking part of your day to spend it with me. It really just means so much to me. Thanks again. I love you, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye.